Today we're gonna make cornbread stuffing. It has mushrooms and sage and rosemary and like a few cranberries thrown in there for flair and a little tang. It's the perfect side dish for your holiday meal, Thanksgiving, Christmas, or really any day. If you're enjoying this video, please hit the subscribe button below and click the bell icon to be notified every time I post a new and delicious recipe. Let's get into it. So the first thing that we have to do is just like chop all the things. I know, it's a bummer, but after this, it comes together super fast. So we're gonna go ahead and just kind of chop our celery, kind of cut little slices. If you love celery, you can totally use more than this. I just don't love celery, unless you cover it in peanut butter, and then I'll eat anything. All right, we'll do our onion. Take a nice medium onion. Now onion, I love the flavor of. Now we're gonna do a nice kind of like a medium dice. Nothing crazy, right? Like we're not trying to be, you know, Michelin starred here. This is not a Michelin starred cornbread stuffing, but you know, you want it to cook evenly. So you do care-ish how thick it is. Like we're on the long ways. And then we're going to cut this way to get our medium dice. Next one. Okay. And there's our onion. It's like almost 2 cups of onion, basically. Like 1 medium onion, 2 cups. Next, we're going to do our mushrooms. These are optional, I guess, if you don't like mushrooms, but I think mushrooms are bomb. I am going to separate the stems, but I am going to use the stems. I just find it easier to dice them when they are separated. If you don't feel like it, then you don't have to, but I think this is a great use of the stems. So these guys, we are just gonna cut slices, and then we're gonna cut back to make kind of like the same kind of medium dice. And we want larger kind of pieces. You want to have a discernible mushroom in your stuffing. So we don't want to like finely dice them. We just want them to be smaller. The stems you kind of cut the same way as you do the onions, where you kind of, you know, cut along the long ways and then you cut down and then you dice. All right, about I'd say a fluffy 2 cups of mushrooms here. What? Is that a designation? No! Today it is. And now we're gonna do our herbs. I have chosen, you can choose whatever you like, but I have chosen rosemary and thyme and sage. I love all the herbs. I think it adds so much flavor. So like the rosemary, you just kind of want to pick off the big meaty, like the big woody stems. The smaller tiny ones on the sides are okay. You just want to kind of get it off of the big stem, because obviously that would not be a delight to eat. This is the savoir, okay? So do not be stingy with your herbs. You know, just when you think you have enough, like maybe pick a couple more. Just, you know, that's my rule. So I'm gonna put that little pile right there. I guess I'm gonna do them all at one time. Grab my sage. Now, I don't want sage. Sage can be overpowering, right? I don't want sage to be the primary flavor here, so I'm going to be a little less, you know, aggressive with my sage. I'm not going to be persnickety about how I cut this, so I'm just going to go ahead and just start in one direction. Don't be stressed if it, you know, you miss some. You're going to go back the other way and the other way again, so don't be stressed. Okay, gather, gather, and do it again. All right, 3 tablespoons. And now we're gonna do our sage. The sage, I do like to kind of gather. I'm gonna kind of do the gather and roll technique. I didn't pick any big pieces, so that's on me. So it's more like just the gather, no rolling. Slice, slice, slice. Yeah, I'm gonna go the other way because I don't really want a big strand of sage in my dressing. It's like 2 tablespoons. Now the thyme, alas, we have to pick. I know, woof. So take a strand, run your fingers down against the grain, if you will, and pull off all of the little thyme bits. If there's some pieces, you can also run a knife through it. So if you get, you know, some of those smaller pieces that have, you know, a couple attached to it, like don't stress about it. You can run a knife through it and it won't be, you know, it's not that serious. And just carry on until you have about 2 tablespoons. So 30 minutes later, see ya. Flip side. All right, the last bit of time has been picked and we are ready to cut our cornbread. This is my savory cornbread. I don't recommend using a sweet cornbread. It'll just be too sweet. You know, you want something that's savory, that's a nice neutral cornbready base. Now, I just kept this in the freezer until I was ready to use it. You can make it, you know, the day before, a couple days before. You can even cube it in advance and let it kind of dry a little bit. And we're just gonna chop it so that it's like nice, even, kind of just cubes. Now, if I were making this with the intention of just baking a cornbread stuffing, I would have baked this in like a sheet pan or in a, you know, a rectangular baking dish, which would make this chopping a whole lot easier. So we'll just kind of get this here. So just get all of your cornbread into your dish. So we have got our cornbread that is cubed. We have our baking dish that is ready. We have all of our ingredients ready. We are just gonna cook our aromatics. So grab a nice big here. Oh, butter. A nice big chunk of butter, it's a quarter cup. In there, and then let that melt. All right, so we're gonna start with our aromatics, and then we are gonna add our onions. Just wanna be careful that you don't burn anything. This would be a good place for some garlic if you are a garlic fan. Put anything you want in here, really. Now I've got my heat kind of on medium because I don't really want, I want to kind of sweat the onions out. I want to kind of soften them. I'm not trying to, you know, get a sear on them at this moment. Go ahead and add our celery. So I want those to leave some of their moisture before we go and add all of these mushrooms, because these mushrooms are gonna, you know, take over the show. All right, so you can see that they've, you know, softened. They've gotten like a little translucent, and they're ready to come off. So we're just going to put them directly on top of our cornbread because there's no need to dirty another dish. Just go ahead and get all of that in there. And now we are going to cook our mushrooms. Now I'm cooking them separately because I would like to cook them a little harder, meaning I want to get a nice sear on them. So I've got a little butter, butter and a little bit of oil. The oil will keep the butter from burning. All right, and we're gonna go ahead and put the mushrooms in there, and then we are not gonna move them. We're gonna let them sit. You can see that they've started to kind of release their juices, that they're like starting to wilt. Some of them have like a little char on them. That is how you know they're ready to be salted. So go ahead and give them a little pinch of salt. Remember, we didn't salt anything else yet, because we want to do that as we get closer to the end, so that, you know, just in case. I don't salt my chicken stock, but you know, in case you know, buy it at the store or what have you, you want to make sure that it's not overpowering. The salt is not overpowering. So you see that they've greatly reduced. They're nice and soft and tender. They've got some caramelization going on. They're not totally cooked. I mean, they're cooked, but I wouldn't necessarily, like, you know, serve them with pasta like this. But they're going to continue to cook in the oven. So I'm going to go ahead and just get them in the. All right, and now we are ready for the assembly. All right, so give it a toss, kind of distribute it throughout. Make sure that you think that, oh no, you feel like that's, you know, it's a good amount of add-ins. You can certainly do more if you'd like. Now the thing I like about cornbread stuffing is I like some big pieces and I like some small pieces. I don't like, you know, one big moosh, and I don't want, you know, just chunks. So part of like tossing in the hot vegetables, and then once we start to add the stock, you know, you're going to start to get some of those smaller pieces and it's going to start to bind. It depends on how much you dried your cornbread. So if you cut it and dried it overnight, then you're definitely going to use a little bit more stock. than, you know, maybe I will right now. So kind of start with part of it and give it a toss. Now you can always let this sit overnight before you bake it, and that is a great way to kind of meld the flavors and just really let it all marry. So I'm gonna season with some salt and pepper here. If you want to do any more dried herbs, you could totally do that. Kind of like working out of a half teaspoon right there, just so I know how much I'm putting in. The more flavorful each layer of your base is, the better the final dish. So the better your chicken stock, the better, you know, your aromatics, all of the better your cornbread, all of those things, the better the final dish. All right, now give it one more final taste. A little bit more salt. I think the moisture level is good, so pick your favorite dish to put it in and go ahead and get it in there. Spread it out a little bit. Now I'm going to put my cranberries on top because I want to see the red. Go ahead and get your cranberries. Now I'm going to reserve some, get some in there. Distributing my stuffing about. Pop this in the oven. I've preheated to 350 degrees. Probably bake like 30 minutes or so. Depends on the dish that you chose. And pretty stoked, not gonna lie. Just taken this out of the oven. It baked about 30-35 minutes. It really just, you're looking for it to be warm throughout and all the flavors to be melded and happy. So we're just gonna let it cool just a little bit and then we're going to try it. It's time to try. I have such a weakness for stuffing. So excited. So excited. Oh yeah, get myself a nice corner bit. Oh, steamy. Yes. See, there's some like big pieces in there and there's some small pieces. I'm just gonna get like, you know, a little of all the things, like a little mushroom, a little like cranberry. It'd be really hot because you know I did not wait. Mmm. Yum. That cornbread base, it's super savory with all of the aromatics that are in there. Like a little bit of tang from the cranberry and that like earthiness from the mushrooms. Oh dear. Mmm.